January 2021, a small-town crime made national news and shook waterfowl hunters to their core. During the final week of Tennessee's duck season, 2 hunters were shot and killed on Reelfoot Lake. A third hunter, suspected of killing both young men, was missing for nearly a week before his body was discovered. A fourth hunter survived. Official details were scarce. Rumors flourished. Media accounts contradicted one another, and onlookers were riveted. Internet voyeurs swapped lurid details and unconfirmed stories on social media, and the duck hunting community was genuinely stricken by the news. Locals rallied in an outpouring of support and sympathy. All 4 men involved in the incident were loved and highly regarded by their families and friends. None of them had a criminal record. Zach Grooms, age 25, and Chance Black, age 26, were fatally shot in a duck blind on Reelfoot Lake at Tennessee's northwest corner. The survivor, Jeff Crabtree, told investigators that around 9 a.m., an elderly man in a boat approached the trio and asked if he could hunt from their blind. They told him he could. Crabtree said he thought it was odd that the man began loading his shotgun then, rather than waiting until he was in hunting position. The man then shot Black and Grooms. The man was later identified as a 70-year-old Tennessee native named David Vowell. The following detailed account of what happened at Reelfoot Lake is from an internet article called Survivor's Story on OutdoorLife.com, which featured an interview with survivor Jeff Crabtree. Obion County lies in the northwest corner of Tennessee, flush with the Kentucky state line and just south of the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. It's where Jeff Crabtree, farmhand, lifelong duck hunter, and the only surviving witness of the Reelfoot shootings, has spent his entire life. Crabtree hunts most of Tennessee's 60-day waterfowl season, so he doesn't worry about skipping a few days, and since the forecast on January 25th called for thunderstorms, he hadn't planned to hunt. I talked him into going because I knew it was going to be good, Chase Petty says quietly from across the counter. Now 26, Petty grew up hunting ducks with Crabtree, his dad's buddy. That's how Crabtree fell in with a crowd of 20-something duck hunters in the first place. He kept hunting when others in his generation called it quits. January 25th was a Monday, so most of the 8 guys who shared the public draw blind on Reelfoot Lake had to work, including Petty. But Zach Grooms was in. The 25-year-old's farm job also allowed him to hunt most of the duck season, and he spent much of it with Crabtree. Sometimes it was just the 2 of them hunting together during the week. That day, however, Grooms had invited his good buddy Chance Black along, so Black, 26, took the morning off from work at Final Flight Outfitters. He told his manager he'd be back in around lunchtime. The 3 men departed from the Walnut Log Ditch Ramp on the north end of the lake in Groom's boat at 5:45 a.m., arriving at their blind on time, about 35 minutes before legal light. As is customary on Reelfoot, the massive spread of some 700 decoys stayed out all season long. But thick clouds kept true shooting light at bay for nearly an hour. At one point, lightning flashed so close the guys hit the deck. "Are you all right?" Grooms hollered at Crabtree, sheltering on the floor himself. The men picked themselves up and spent the morning shooting ducks through the sheets of rain sweeping across the lake. At what he guesses was about 8:30 a.m., Crabtree spotted a boat idling through the strewn waters of the upper Blue Basin, headed for the northwest shore to the private blind that sits approximately 250 yards away at their 11 o'clock. But Crabtree never saw any of the spinner decoys turned on at registered blind 164. He didn't hear any shooting either. The morning wore on for Crabtree, Black, and Grooms in blind 58, and so did the thunderstorm. Black cooked breakfast on their old stove, bacon, eggs, and toast with jelly. Then an hour or more after that first sighting, Crabtree spotted a John boat again, idling south along the shoreline. As it approached, Crabtree recognized it as the same one he'd seen arrive at blind 164 earlier. It looked like there was one person aboard, but Crabtree lost sight of the boat as it rounded the leafy corner of their own blind. He couldn't hear much either. It was raining, and Crabtree had on a waterproof, dog-eared Cabela's cap with his hood tugged over it. Black made his way to the empty end of the blind and popped out of the last shooting hole to speak to the man in the John boat. Crabtree heard talking but couldn't tell what was going on. Black came back to his own shooting hole and told Grooms the guy in the boat wanted to hunt with him. Blind 58 is a low-ceiling structure built of scrap wood, and its brushed-in roof to water line with leafy branches. There are 10 shooting holes at the front of the blind. Sheets of rubber roofing hang behind the shooting holes to hold heat in the kitchen and in the seating area at the back of the blind. A short, wide doorway opens into the attached boathouse. The whole structure is approximately 30 feet wide and 29 feet deep. From a distance, it looks like a small, brushy island floating in the marsh. On this day, Groom's boat was tied up in the boathouse. As he ducked past the rubber curtain and headed out to meet the stranger, Crabtree turned to Black. "Who is it?" "I don't know," Black replied. "And what'd he want?" "He wants to hunt with us," Black repeated. In the minutes that followed, the only thing Crabtree heard was Grooms, who said something like, "Can I help you?" Except for those words and the battering wind and rain, all was quiet. It wasn't until Crabtree heard someone climbing into the blind that he pulled aside the rubber curtain behind his own shooting hole and squinted into the darkness. Grooms wasn't in sight. Instead, there was a man obscuring the entrance, his hood pulled up and body bent double beneath the low ceiling. It was hard to tell. Crabtree was sitting 15 feet from the entrance, and the back of the blind was as dark as a bedroom, with the curtains closed. But it looked like the man had his shotgun rolled upside down and was putting shells into the magazine tube. There was no sound, though, no mechanical chunk of a shell sliding into the chamber, or the softer clicks of shells being pushed into the magazine tube. Later, Crabtree would wonder if the stranger was checking to make sure the semi-auto was fully loaded. "I'm almost to the point then to say, 'Hey, you need to stand up in the shooting hole to load your gun,' Crabtree says. 'You don't load a gun in the back of the blind and go up through the shooting hole with it.' But then the man pivoted, slowly back towards the boathouse, gun held at his hip with the barrel pointing out the door. Boom! First thing I thought was, 'Aw, hell,' Crabtree says. 'I was hoping Zach was up in the front of the boat, maybe because there's supply shelf out there. I mean, that's just what I thought. I thought the gun accidentally went off.' Then he heard something. Someone hit the water. 'Oh my God,' Crabtree hollered. 'He shot Zach.' Black, who was closer, beelined for the door and scrambled into the boat. The man hunched beside the entrance was still holding the shotgun in one hand, the barrel now pointed towards Crabtree's thigh. Crabtree reached him in just a few steps. Crabtree grabbed the shotgun barrel, jerking the autoloader to the floor and shouting as he shouldered past the stranger. "Who the hell are you?" "David Vowell," the man replied, his voice flat. "What in the hell's wrong with you?" "I don't know," Vowell replied in the same slack voice. Grabbing the scruff of Vowell's neck as he went, Crabtree shoved him to the floor as he hurried into the boathouse. Grooms had fallen into the water between his own boat and the far wall of brushed-in wire. He was below the surface, unmoving. Black was shouting as the two tried to pull Groom's 200-plus-pound frame out of the water. Then Crabtree straightened with a jerk, remembering Vowell. "I thought, this son of a bitch has to be accountable for what he done," Crabtree says. As he climbed back into the blind, Vowell was getting to his feet. Crabtree grabbed the older man with two hands like a bouncer, one near his collar and the other around his torso. "And I just shoved him as hard as I could, out through the door and into our boat. I was still thinking that the gun had accidentally went off, but my thoughts was that I needed to keep an eye on him. My adrenaline was going so much then, and Chance was still screaming and hollering, trying to get Zach in the boat." Crabtree went over to help, and this time the two men were able to haul their buddy over the gunwale. There was a wound in Groom's chest where his call lanyard should have been. Crabtree was almost certain his friend was dead, but he pushed the thought back and focused. "My God, we've got to get out of here," Crabtree shouted at Black. "We got to go, now." He untied Vowell's boat, which was blocking the boathouse entrance, and threw the rope into the water. Self-service is virtually non-existent along the north end of the lake. Besides, Crabtree had left his cell phone behind in the shooting hole, along with his wallet, truck keys, and shotgun. Crabtree bumped the front of the now unearthed vessel as he reversed and then headed for the Walnut Log Ditch boat launch. But Crabtree couldn't get the 16-foot boat on plane with the rainwater bogging it down. Black spread himself across the step bow, adding weight to help level the boat. Vowell was huddled on his hands and knees on the starboard side. Grooms was motionless on the port. Crabtree was trying to trim the motor with one hand and shield his face from the rain with the other when he spotted the shotgun in the bottom of the boat. Within arm's reach of Vowell lay the Remington 870 they used to finish off crippled ducks. He yelled at Black to grab the shotgun. "I wanted him to get the gun and make sure it was unloaded," says Crabtree, who thinks he had time to yell twice, maybe 3 times. "But he don't. He's not hearing me. He's not hearing me." And the old man gets the gun in his hands. Maybe Black saw movement, or Yell slipped past his hood in the rain, because he turned to Vowell, raised the shotgun. Black shoved the barrel aside, but not fast enough. The boy probably didn't lack but a half a second, and the barrel would have cleared him. Instead, Vowell shot him here, Crabtree says, pointing to the left side of his torso, about the lower half of his rib cage. Then Vowell turned around for me, and when he did, I did get the barrel, because the first thing is to get it away from you, and the gun never goes off for nothing. I jerked the gun from him, and I just double-handed the barrel. Crabtree memes wiping both hands around the barrel and swinging the buttstock above his own head and down onto Vowell's like a sledgehammer. I meant to hit him and right on top of the head. I meant to kill him. I mean, that's where I was at with the deal. I'm realizing this son of a bitch is sick. He came to kill us. All three. Crabtree thinks the stock landed a little farther back than he intended, maybe the crown of Vowell's head. Even so, the blow knocked the older hunter back. Crabtree threw the gun to the floor, grabbed Vowell. This time he saw Vowell. The older man seemed to be reaching for a few cypress trees as he tried to stand in the thigh-deep water. Crabtree says there was a patch of bank just a few steps from him. Normally, it would take the hunters 10 minutes to travel from Blind 58 to the Walnut Log Ditch boat ramp, down in a stump-free channel that snakes through the cypress trees on the lake's perimeter. Here I am like this. Crabtree tilts his hand at 45 degrees to indicate the boat jutting out of the water, running about 5-7 miles an hour, all the while thinking, my God, please let this big boat come down the channel. Let me meet somebody. And Chance was rolling in the boat and screaming. I'm telling him, please hang on, please hang on. I'm trying to get help. And I go all the way to the ramp. It seemed like it takes a day. But there weren't any other hunters at the boat ramp or the parking lot, so Crabtree overshot the takeout by almost a quarter mile, stopping, he said, at the first house along the channel. Crabtree landed the boat on the bank, ran across the road in the rain, and hammered on the house's front door. He told the woman who answered to call 911, and once she got through with that, anyone else she could think of, the Sheriff's Department, the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, everybody. By the time Crabtree got back to the boat, Black wasn't yelling anymore. He had succumbed to his gunshot wound. 15 minutes after the 911 call went through, a pair of Obion County Sheriff's cars pulled into the nearby parking lot around 11 a.m. Then another vehicle arrived, and another, and soon the whole area was swarming with officials, and nobody seemed to have cell service. Crabtree paced, agitated and unable to stand still as he gave the first of several statements to law enforcement. He remembers seeing the guys still in the boat, rain pouring down, and asked someone to cover them. The woman who called 911 found a piece of plastic. I'm all to pieces, just a wreck, says Crabtree. My heart was probably racing 1,000 miles an hour. After being taken to Union City, where he gave a statement 2 more times, Crabtree was asked by a Tennessee Bureau of Investigation official to take him back to the site to show him where he had thrown Vowell out of the boat. By the time they had gotten back to the mouth of the channel, the water had come up about a foot. Vowell was nowhere to be seen. Crabtree knows this stretch of lake well, but the unattended motor had drifted into the windswept current while he disarmed Vowell and pushed him overboard. Crabtree guessed where he had left the older man, and the TBI agent marked it with the GPS. By now, there was a dozen or so boats bobbing around the 2 blinds, most of them provided by TWRA agents. Officials found Vowell's shotgun on the floor of Blind 58, where Crabtree said he'd thrown it. An empty hole was stuck in the action. That is why Crabtree figures he wasn't shot while disarming Vowell the first time. On the water, Crabtree overheard one official say he could smell propane coming from Vowell's blind, even from 100 feet away. Another mentioned someone had turned the kitchen gas on and ripped up paper towels as if to build a fire. Carl Jackson, the sheriff of Obion County, has since confirmed a propane tank had been left on, and paper towels spread on the griddle had burned in the middle. Subsequent interviews with Vowell's hunting buddies revealed they often spread paper towels over the griddle after making breakfast to soak up grease. The open propane valve, however, was definitely out of place. According to Jackson, investigators have not determined whether the running propane or singed paper towels were accidental or deliberate, nor who had left the gas on. Authorities located Vowell's boat that same day, roughly 400 to 500 yards from Blind 58 in the southeast corner of Blue Basin. The motor was still idling. The vehicle Vowell had been driving was parked at his usual launch at Gray's camp, but Vowell himself was still missing, and it was getting dark. Officials returned Crabtree to the boat ramp where his son picked him up. I'm done, Crabtree announced as they drove him home. I'm done duck hunting. I can't deal with this. The following day, the TBI issued warrants for the arrest of David Vowell on 2 counts of first-degree murder, identifying Vowell as the 70-year-old suspect who should be considered armed and dangerous. The day after that, rising lake water in murky conditions forced officials to call off their search. The manhunt resumed on Friday, January 28th, with authorities searching by foot, boat, and helicopter. At last, on Sunday afternoon, January 30th, Vowell turned up. A duck hunter was looking for loose decoys among the cypress trees of Bayou de Chien when his young nephew spotted a bit of camouflage. David Vowell's body had washed onto the bank not far from where he had last been seen alive. So those are the facts of the case of the murdered duck hunters on Reelfoot Lake that happened in January of 2021. And it's almost been a year now since these murders took place. And a whole lot more is not known about this, of course, as the perpetrator of the 2 murders was killed, as I just mentioned, and the only survivor, of course, being Jeff Crabtree. His statement, as I mentioned, was given many times to police, and his story never changed, not even one slight bit. And the story that he told completely matched up with the evidence of the crime scenes. David Vowell's younger brother Richard was interviewed, and he made the comment that there's no rationale behind it. He said, for anyone, not just us, but for the people that were killed, none of this makes sense. None of it makes any sense. And I am just, David and I are very much alike, and it's hard to make him mad. It is extremely difficult to make him mad. If I get mad, I'm pretty mad. But again, it's just not my nature. It's not David's nature. And that's the saddest part about it. And Richard said that he saw his brother David about 3 times a week, and that he did not know that anything was off about his older brother. And it was said that in the week before this tragedy happened, that David Vowell told his wife that he thought he was getting dementia because he was forgetting things. And his wife kind of wrote it off. And David Vowell told his wife that he had made a doctor's appointment that was actually, from what I understand, scheduled for the same day that the murders happened. The murders happened in the morning, and he supposedly had that doctor's appointment in the afternoon to go about getting tested for dementia. And he had also told another couple that he knew that he felt that he was getting dementia. And this was also in the week before the murder. So this was something that was very recent. It was also said that David Vowell had started taking an antidepressant about 6 months or so before the murders took place. So maybe the antidepressant had a strange effect on him and could have been causing his symptoms that led him to believe he was getting dementia. David Vowell's mother was still alive. She was in her 90s and she had dementia. So it was said that he was possibly paranoid about getting it himself since it ran into his family. But no one said there was any violent side to David Vowell whatsoever. So it just made no sense to anyone that knew him. He had run a company, family business for a long, long time. They had building supplies, and the company was still open for business, but David had retired from it, and that was called Vowell and Sons. And no one that knew him saw any side of this about him ever. So it's just strange if it was caused by the dementia or not. And that's just what they speculate. They don't know. The autopsy couldn't reveal what was wrong with it, what could have been wrong in his brain. And one podcast that talked about this case a lot was really centering on the fact of all the violence that can happen during duck season at Reelfoot Lake, because these hunting blinds are so coveted, and they were all grandfathered for a long, long time. And then they would turn over to where the public could use them, and guys would get there very, very early in the morning trying to beat other guys, and there'd be altercations at the boat ramps and stuff like that because someone might go get someone else's coveted hunting spot that they kind of considered to be their own. And for the people that really knew this case the best, and these guys that are involved, they said that just wasn't the case out here. It wasn't a case of him being mad about these guys taking his hunting spot. They said that just didn't add up to any of them. Another podcast that I had mentioned earlier actually knew the victims, and they said this case absolutely had nothing to do with being jealous or angry that the 3 men were at this hunting spot that maybe David Vowell was kind of eyeing for himself. They don't think that had anything to do with it. It was literally like the guy just temporarily lost his sanity or something like that and shot these 2 guys and just didn't know why. It's just really strange. It's not really common for people, even with dementia, to do that. They can have violent outbursts and act very strange, but to just shoot two people in cold blood is still atypical. It's not normal, even for people getting dementia. So going back to my last point, here is a snippet that says, Field and Stream reported that Reelfoot Lake has a controversial history. Reelfoot Lake is a tough place, one that's legendary for blind burnings, fist fights, and boat ramp justice against anyone who doesn't follow the rules. We lost a member of our team today, Chance Black. He was shot and killed along with his friend while duck hunting on Reelfoot Lake, wrote Final Flight Outfitters, the sporting goods store where Black worked. Chance was a full-time manager in our gun department, and what an honor it has been for us to have him on our team. We ask for prayers for Chance's family, friends, and all others involved as we navigate the impact of their deaths. So that's going back to the whole thing about they felt that it was over the duck blind, or just the people trying to beat him to the duck blind, and maybe they had a better spot than he did. And these other guys that had that podcast that actually knew these guys said it really had nothing to do with it. They're just something that snapped within David Vowell, and like he just didn't know what he was doing, and he just shot these two guys. But how did he also know how to load his boat, take his boat to the boat ramp, and launch it, and navigate through the water, and even know how to load his shotgun to kill these two guys? It's just strange how he would still be able to do all that, but then temporarily lose his mind enough to kill someone twice, kill two people. First, the first one, and then do it again to the second one. And absolutely, I'm sure he would have tried to kill Crabtree as well, but he didn't get the chance to. So it's just one of those strange mysteries. Was it caused by the dementia, or did something else go on that we just will never know about? I found this article on the internet that could possibly shine some light on what happened at Reelfoot Lake, and it says, can dementia cause aggressive behavior? As a person's dementia progresses, they may sometimes behave in ways that are physically or verbally aggressive. This can be very distressing for the person and for those around them. Looking at what causes their behavior and being aware of the person's needs can help reduce this behavior or make it easier for them to manage. It further says the aggression could be verbal, for example, swearing, screaming, shouting, or making threats, or physical, for example, hitting, pinching, scratching, hair pulling, biting, or throwing things. Some people assume that aggressive behavior is a symptom of dementia itself. This can be true, but it's more likely that there is another cause. It's important to see beyond the behavior and think about what may be causing it. Reasons for the person's behavior could include difficulties to do with dementia, for example, memory loss, language, or orientation problems, or their mental and physical health. For example, they may have pain or discomfort and they are unable to communicate. This could be kind of what happened to David Vowell. He could have just realized he was losing some of his memory and just was coming to grips with that. They said that he had hunted a week prior to the murders, and he had told the guys he was hunting with in a different duck blind that he thought he was getting dementia and starting to forget things, and that he wouldn't be able to hunt anymore, and it's something that he loved to do. So he could have just been coming to grips with it and took his anger out on these two poor young guys. So in closing, I would like to dedicate this video to the memories of Chance Black and Zach Grooms. May they rest in peace, and hopefully their families one day have answers to what happened out at Reelfoot Lake.